Welcome back to Behind the Scene, the podcast where we uncover new perspectives, challenge our views, and explore the invisible threads that connect us all. I'm Mark Bauer.
And I'm Branden. In this episode, we're delving into the complexities of community and connection in a culture that often feels fragmented. We'll be discussing how the search for belonging has shifted, especially among younger generations, and the role of acceptance in fostering true community.
We're also thrilled to welcome Derek Miner, an artist and leader who embodies the message of resisting divisive systems and promoting authentic relationships. Derek's insights on how we can cultivate environments of acceptance and love are more relevant now than ever.
Join us as we explore the themes of healing, the nature of acceptance, and how we can move beyond the noise of our current climate to find genuine connection.
Let's dive in.
All right, we have the Derek Miner with us today. So excited to have you here. Mark, good to see you.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah, there you are. It's been a minute.
Yeah, here I am. It's been a second.
Been a second since we
good to have you on.
Man, what's happening? It's a pleasure to be here, for sure. When Branden Polk hits you up, you got to take the call and you got to do it. That's a good brother right there. He's been a blessing to me. So anytime you say pull up, I'm there.
Oh, well, bro, the feeling is mutual. I have so much love and respect for you. And even before we met, I was trolling you. I was watching, I was listening to the music. I was doing all of it. And I wasn't even a hip hop dude until you, for real. It was kind of like, the thing was happening because of Derek Miner. You, Tripp, Lecrae, y'all were the ones that were bringing it home during those early years. But, what's funny about that, though, is that, and I'll let you give a little bit of your story and your background and just like riff and talk about what's on your heart right now and what's coming new for you. But I didn't even hear about you till I got with white people. I hear about you in the black church. Wasn't nobody rapping about Derek or Lecrae. Wasn't nobody talking about y'all. It was when I got over. I remember it was the white Pentecostals.
Man, shout out to the Assemblies of God. They definitely they blessed your boy for sure.
They bless you, man. I remember I was in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and I was I ended up at a youth rock concert or something. It's like a worship, and they were doing heavy metal and mosh pitting up in there, something like that. And all of a sudden somebody started playing Lecrae. I was like, what is going on? And I was like, ain't a black person in there to boot. I was like, this is hilarious. I was like, who are these people? I didn't know the lyrics. I didn't know anything, So anyway, grateful to these, and it was Assemblies of God. It was a serious situation. I definitely remember that. So anyway, super grateful to have you here, bro, and just talking. This is behind the scene. We're just going to be talking real talk, being authentic, vulnerable. At the time of this recording, we're 12 days before the national presidential election. So we may cross over into that dangerous territory tonight. We shall see. Now that Barack has told me I needed to vote for Kamala because I'm a black man, I wonder how I should vote as a Christian, because they keep trying to tell us that. Mark Driscoll is telling me I need to vote like Jesus. All of that's going on. Yeah, we're going to call him out. It's okay. Derek.
What? We ain't even been on this one 5 minutes.
Yo, we ain't got nothing but time to waste.
He said, let's get it. Let's just go and rip the Band-Aid off. I like it. What's up?
Right on. Okay, so tell us what's going on. Give us a little bit of your background for the audience who may not know you. A little bit of your background, your spiel, and then anything you want to say that's going on right now in your life, like top of mind. How are you coming in to this conversation today? And then we'll jump in from there and see where we go.
Man, so my name is Derek Miner. My family is from Pontiac, Michigan, which is right outside of Detroit, Michigan. My mom moved us down here to Tennessee right when I was a young dude. So I grew up, my mom is, right now, she is like a preacher's preacher. Like, I mean, every morning you wake up, she has YouTube and there's preachers running for hours on hours. Like, I mean, everything we do, we talk about God. No matter what I say, she's like, don't forget, you only doing it because of God. You know what I mean? She's that person. And I say to this day, she's the greatest example I've ever had of somebody being actually, a believer in Christ, because she is who she is in front of people and at home. I can say that undoubtedly. But, I grew up, which is crazy, you bringing up like, man, your first being exposed to me was in the white church because I come from the black church. I come from I grew up in Mount Zion Pentecostal church that we restructured to New Harvest Community Family Church when all the black churches started trying to be more, accessible to everybody else. But we was Mount Zion at first. Grew up running around the church, grew up speaking in tongues, Acts 2:38, all that good stuff. And that's all I knew. And the thing that I appreciate about growing up is the church wasn't necessarily just about what you knew, but it was about your heart. Like people was actually coming in there, like in the church, in a black church, there's going to be the single moms are going to be in there. You're going to have the dope heads in there. You're going to have the dope dealers in there. You're going to have all types of different things. The inappropriate testimony service where the girl tell you she was a prostitute and all that. It's like it's kids in here, Keisha, you gotta chill out, right?
Not Keisha.
That's how I grew up.
Not Keisha. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's beautiful though, because what I learned was, I think people always talk about me, about my vulnerability. That's why I learned it, because I feel like in that type of setting, everybody knows everybody's crap. So there's no real reason to try to pretend to be something other than who you are. You just be yourself, because you try to be anything other than that, you're going to get called out. Fast forward, we moved to Memphis because my wife gets her pharmacy. She's getting her pharmacy degree, got accepted in the UT Memphis, and that's where I meet Lecrae. And that's when I actually got exposed into anything other than the black church, because I didn't know about you. I had never even heard the word evangelical. I had never heard of a lot of these white pastors that a lot of people had. Like, all I knew was T.D. Jakes. That was about it. My pastor and T.D. Jakes, Creflo every now and again. Creflo was in his heyday during that time.
He didn't have the airplane then.
Yeah, he ain't had a plane back then. He was just regular Creflo. But it was during that time, like that's when I got exposed to a whole new world. And that's the crazy part is that is where my career took off. And I was always, as far as Reach was like clean cut black dudes. Like, oh, these dudes know theology. They know this. And I was like the hood dude talking about his dad being on crack and, and I got a song called Dear Mr. Christian where I rap from the perspective of a sex worker. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, I would make songs like that because that was kind of the life that I knew. So that was, all that was, I always was like, man, I'm coming to this place. I was always told if you preach the gospel, people going to respect it. And you tell your story, people going to respect it. But I always kind of found myself being kind of pushed over into this corner of like, we don't know what to do with him. Literally, I had a friend, Art, he said, they was talking to an executive, I won't mention the name, but they was like, we don't know what to do with him. He's too black. So I was like, okay, all right. This is years after I'm long gone and I'm kind of started building my own thing. So from there, that's when I started saying like, I'm going to build my own thing and put my efforts into the community that I know. I remember being at, I would say the height of my familiarity within the evangelical culture. I was miserable and I'm playing arenas every night. But playing arenas, but also having to feel like I have to be someone different than myself. No one ever told me I had to do that, but in order to be relatable, like nothing in my story was relatable to them, and I didn't really relate to a lot with them. So I started finding myself feeling isolated, feeling alone, feeling like losing purpose. And my man Blake, Pastor Blake in Houston, I'll never forget this. He came to one of my shows in Houston. He saw it. He wasn't really impressed. He was like, oh, man, you're in the arena. It's cool. I get home and I'm telling him how I feel. And he says, when you first started making music, did you make this to play arenas or to change your community? And I was like, to change my community. And it was at that moment I got rid of my management, and I began to pull everything that I had in like CCM, Christian music world, into just normal hip hop. And that's the journey that I've been on so far. Obviously, a lot of us got during the George Floyd and the Trayvon Martin and the Mike Browns and all that. A lot of us had a lot of awakenings. I didn't necessarily have an awakening. I had a remembrance of, oh, this is what I remember growing up in the rural South. I remembered that there would be people that would call you the N-word, but at the same time, they're at church every Sunday. And it was like, oh, I'm starting to see like there is a, like, for some white people, there's a split that they don't realize that how they think about the world, that it could have some racial bias there. But then also at the same time, what God has revealed in me is that growing up in the rural South, I actually wasn't immune to that as well. There were some things in my mind that I had to wrestle with. So these past 5 years of mine have been a healing journey. It started with Ownership is the New Black, me telling a story about Black ownership. And we took 2 groups of people to Washington, D.C., 1 group of people to the White House, help invest in Black businesses, help talk to the SBA and all that. And it was that season that kind of, and Branden, you were instrumental in helping us be able to do that. And a lot of these guys are doing amazing things now. From that trip,
They're doing great things, man. I love them.
So,
yeah.
but yeah, that's the spill. That's the, I don't know if that was 5 to 10 minutes, but yeah,
it
that's
don't
the
matter.
spill. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Derek, what stands out to me is, I've been on a journey since before I moved to DC. Well, in 2017, I moved to DC in the first place because I was kind of befuddled. I grew up in evangelical conservative community and just was really kind of disillusioned by what I heard being talked about on Fox News, Trump's ascension, what people were talking about in the church around the elections. So I was like, man, I want to be proximate to DC, to power, to kind of understand firsthand what's going on. But like a month before I moved to DC, I watched Straight Outta Compton, and that was the first that kind of actually triggered something in me, where there was something there where Ice Cube says something in the movie about how rap is their CNN, because the cable news is only telling certain angles about where they're from and what they're about, and rap is their expression to be able to get their truth out. And so entertainment and art, even just watching that movie, I remember in my studio apartment a month before I moved into DC, it kind of just hit me. I was like, wow, I remember growing up in the 90s and watching cable news and understanding certain things about certain people based on what was being told to me. And it just made me, start examining it from a different perspective. And then since I moved to DC, I met Branden, and then we went off, shot out of a cannon, and on this evolution to unpack a lot of these things that I learned growing up. And so, I understand art is hugely important to that. And, you're creating your art from your perspective, and then you're running into an institutional problem where, the producers or the people who are backing you, there's that tension between what you're trying to say and what they want to tolerate or what they want to, elevate. And so, you talked about the last few years being a healing moment for you. Was that scary, to make that decision to kind of get back to creating from your story, or I guess can you unpack a little bit more of what that was like for you in that moment?
Yeah. So the beautiful thing I think about with me, I never really shied away from my story, but I often was frustrated that people didn't accept it and that people didn't understand it. That I got a lot of pushback. People would say, "Oh, you're race baiting," or and it's like I never even heard that word before. So, imagine writing lyrics, telling your story, and then someone would say, they put it in these different containers. And it's like, no, that's just my story. I don't have any desire to get anything out of you. I'm just telling you my story. If anything, it's more beneficial for me to not say these things than it is to actually say them. I'm saying them because I feel convicted to say them. So what I found though is that let's break down Christian rap, or let's break down Christian music in general. So the reason why earlier you didn't hear a lot of Derek Minor or Lecrae in a black church is because you got two things going against you. Number one is hip hop is black culture. Like it started there. It may have evolved to a place where it's inclusive of other people, but at its root, it's black culture. So when a black person gets saved, quote unquote, the first thing they do is throw their hip hop away, right? And it's because that's a part of the culture that has often been very explicit, et cetera, et cetera. So in a lot of the black churches, we didn't get accepted early on because grandma and them and auntie and them, they remember the Ice Cubes and the NWAs and what they hear on the radio. And they're like, I'm trying to get my kids out of that. So they were like, nah, I can't do the rap thing with Jesus. Like it's Jesus is real. It's Kirk Franklin, it's Fred Hammond. That's Jesus, right? So you got that, where in the white churches, it's just a story. There's no emotion to it. There's no nothing. It's just cool beats. And these guys talking about some stuff, right? So that made it a lot easier to be accepted in these evangelical circles than to actually be accepted in black church. Now, it's a little bit different now. I feel like we kind of broke the mold a bit in that way to where, you know, Christian hip hop is a lot more accepted in churches today. But you got that. The second thing you have, one of my, the same pastor, Pastor Blake, broke it down, because I was like, man, if I begin to pull myself out of this place, like financially, I don't know what I'm going to do. And it's like, man, I want to go to these black churches and such. He's like, bro, look, I'm going to keep it real with you. He said, some of these pastors are going out for like less than a tenth of what you go out. And ain't no pastor going to bring no rapper in to no church before they bring in a pastor. So what I found was, it's like, oh, the issue is that a lot of black churches are also under-resourced. And I didn't know that. So you have these mega, these white booking agents, and, offer comes in for a small amount at, Mount Zion Baptist Church. And then another offer comes in at this big Assemblies of God white church. They're going to take the bigger offer because, they get commission. Like, that's just plain and simple. The other one isn't necessarily worth the work in their mind because there's no mission there, right? So when you look at those two things, so what I did was I decided, okay, number one, I have to find a way to supplement my income while I figure this out. So for about 3 or 4 years, all I did was make music for TV and film. So if you listen to like ESPN, my music is on there all the time. My music was in the NBA Finals last year. I had some stuff on the NBA 2K commercial online. So had some stuff in TBS and Black. So that's where I started supplementing my finances.
You were up for a Grammy too, weren't you? Did you get that
so
Grammy?
I got with the Fist Jubilee Singers. And so we had some things like that. So I had to find other routes to use my talent that didn't necessarily compromise my beliefs. So that's where I went into the music for television and film. But now that I've been established in that way, the newer music that I'm putting out now allows me to tell more of my story as opposed to focusing on creating records for ESPN and such.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about that too? Because you had a new album you've been working on, which I'm excited for you to tell the people about. We had a conversation about this. I feel connected to the meaning and picking up what you're putting down right now. And even something that you were mentioning about the incentives in Christian music industry, but I think it's just the incentives in entertainment right now are like off, and the incentives in the culture are off. We don't know, right? I think we know how to act, but we're not incentivized to act in the way in which we know we should in the culture right now. So because the incentives aren't there, we resort to canceling people, telling folks what they should be like as opposed to accepting people as they are. So instead we're trying to force people into compliance as opposed to creating places of belonging and connection. And in reality, that would be the church, right? We would hope that that would be the church. And I think we're actually seeing some of that happen right now. I was just on a meeting this other week where it seems like that the numbers for Gen X and millennials are going up for church attendance right now, but ever so slightly. But I have a concern that, those folks are coming for connection and for belonging. But as soon as they get in that system long enough and someone says, we don't accept you because of this in your life, or you have to change this in your life, then you're actually going to see people leave the organized church again. And we're not going to have these places, that people are going to heal, to connect with community again. And loneliness continues to get exacerbated in the culture. All of that is to say, bro, I think that your message and your story and where you're going and how you're crafting things right now feels like it's fed into this new product, this fresh product that you have coming out to market. So let's talk about that a little bit more. What do you think?
So I truly believe that the culture is ripe for revival. I feel like it's during times like these is when the remnant, as the Bible would say, begins to step up and people begin to say, oh, there's the real thing there, what I've been looking for. When you think about community, one of the core tenets of community is acceptance. That's why we join communities, regardless, every community. It's the idea of whatever idea that I believe, whatever ideological thing that I have, I could come here and I can have people either challenge me in that, help me grow in that, help me become stronger in that. But I never have to be embarrassed that I have these ideologies, right? So when you look at our culture now, when the pandemic happened, we weren't able to have that together. And I think it was beginning to happen a little bit before. Like the internet allowed us to say, you know what? I could go to Bedside Baptist this morning, right? The internet allows us to say, you know what, I don't got to go see Branden. I can just do a Zoom call with Branden, right? I can do a FaceTime with Branden. And the convenience, what we swapped out from that is that life on life, that ability to connect actually, because things happen in person that never happen online. It's just the truth of the matter. So what I look at as far as culture is concerned is that people have now resorted to attention. They're like, well, if I can't get acceptance, let me get attention, right? So I can't get acceptance, I get attention, so I get on the internet, and now I need to become an influencer. I mean, everyone wants to become an influencer. They don't even have a reason. They're not even trying to make money, nothing. We're just getting online to try to get attention because we lack that acceptance in that community, right? And what has happened is it's created this toxic idea that what's most important is getting attention on myself. So tell me, what person is incentivized to tell Democrats and Republicans, hey guys, we need to love each other and work together? No one's going to give that any attention. If I'm going to get more attention, whether I believe it or not, by telling someone that, you know what, Branden, stay away from that guy. He's dangerous, and I'm going to tell you why. And for you to do the same to me. And all that does is further fragments things. And the concept I had was, are we live in a world where it really feels as though like pride and greed and lust and gluttony and all those things have ran rampant, to where I believe that it's important for us to resist those things. The thing about community, especially with the church, what I remember about the church, I don't remember learning a whole bunch of information, although I got it. What I remember is when I came to church and I was struggling with anger, that an elder would tell me, hey, you know what? Let's work on that together. Let's work on it. I would have somebody say, you need to fast and pray. They would hold me accountable in a level of discipline and love that I would be able to get. And what I want to be able to do is bring people back to that idea. It's like, man, guys, it's not natural. It's not natural for us to be addicted to lust. It's not natural for us to be addicted to gluttony. It's not natural for us to be greedy. That's not a natural thing. That's not a is what it is thing. it's something that we should resist. And that's why I came up with the concept vigilante, and the whole tagline is resist the system. And that's the concept of the album. It's like, what happens when we begin to rise up and say, you know what? I'm not going to make myself subject to pride anymore. I'm going to fight it with everything that I can and find humility in the sense of that. That's my message, is resist the things because they don't benefit us. It doesn't benefit our culture to be greedy. It benefits our culture to be generous. And that's the big picture of the music and the whole movement in the brand, Vigilante.
When is that coming out? Do you have a date yet?
We're working on it,
Okay.
but this thing has been 3 years in the making.
Dang. Okay.
So we've been working on it. I've been crafting this for 3 years. It'll be next year for sure. I'm thinking early next year, but I don't have a date right now.
I'll be your number one listener on Spotify if that's the focus. By the end of the year, give me the Spotify rap. I'll
follow your boy.
Yeah,
Follow your
yeah.
boy. Subscribe, all that. You know the things we gotta do. But yeah, man, that's my movement, bro.
We're gonna need it. I mean, we need it now. And I appreciate you saying, and I believe this too, that the culture is ripe for a revival, renewal of some kind. And I think that's as much secular as it is spiritual. And I think what I mean by that is that, people are eager to be healed and are willing to endure painful things in order to achieve that healing, right? Are willing to do hard things in order to pursue or achieve that healed state. And something that I, have said before is that just because you have pain, that doesn't mean that you aren't healing. And the absence of pain doesn't mean that you're healed. And so, question for you: what is healing? Let's do a round robin, actually, because Mark, I want you to answer the question too. What is healing, or what do you want to bring into the light to be healed between you and God, you and your community, your friends, your family right now?
For me, healing is peace. It's peace. And I'm not even talking about like lack of conflict, but the ability to be who I desire to be, even in the midst of conflict. What I found was when there was conflict or things that triggered certain responses, I would become someone different. So normally I'm a chill person, right? But man, if there was a person that tugged at that racial trauma, now I'm not chill no more. I'm ready to put hands on you, right? And I'm not that type of person. I'm not a violent person. But that would drive me to a level of losing my restraint. And I had to start asking myself, well, number one, what makes that person's opinion of me that important? That was a question that I had to answer. What makes that person's opinion of me so important that I would lay down my code of morals and ethics and want to fight them? Until I could answer that question, I couldn't find any healing. And what I realized was, oftentimes, because I didn't heal that 12-year-old kid that grew up in the rural South, that 10-year-old kid that watched his grandfather get beat up by the police, like, until I didn't, because that person never got healed, he just grew up with me. And I had to go through a season of comforting him and actually saying, you're safe now. And that was wrong. That was painful for you to endure, but you're safe now. You don't have to react to everybody that pulls on that thread. Because the devil knows how to use that, or just people. They know how to use that to take advantage of you and to pull you out of your peace. So for me, it's all about maintaining peace through whatever situation.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, thank you. Get your peace,
Mm-hmm.
not a piece of steel, as my dad would say.
Right.
But just get you a piece.
P-E-A-C-E.
P-E-A-C-E. Not a piece, not a piece. Yeah. Mark, how about you, my friend? When's the last time I asked you a vulnerable question?
Oh shoot! I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
No,
well, it's probably
no.
true.
On the pod. No, I think a few months ago when we met up in Dallas. That was almost probably a year now at this point. But no, you're good at those, man. And I'm trying to figure out. I know. So before we started recording, we talked about me getting married and how it was a quick wedding. Like, we sent out invitations like 4 weeks before, and like, we were on with it. But she's someone I've known since 2018, so I've known her for several years. So, and then we reconnected earlier this year, and I am in a place of healing right now myself, and so even getting into relationship with her and taking these next steps, I was grateful that she'd known me from a place that was a little bit more healthy and whole, because she knew the type of man that, even if I'm not in a place of health necessarily right now, I think he can heal in a relationship, and she's kind of been a conduit to that healing, and really just embracing me and accepting me for where I am right now, and understanding that it's not linear, and so and even talking about recording the podcast, starting this up again, I'm like, man, I don't feel really healed right now, and part of my hurt or wounds that come out is I tend to want to turtle when I'm not in a place of health, and so I tend to pull back, and that's really the last thing that I should be doing. So for me, it looks like engaging and leaning in, even if I feel like there could be hurt on the other side. I think the last few years, I've gone out and tried to do several different things, and kind of gotten like touching a hot stove, and you kind of do it over and over again, and you don't want to engage anymore, and you see the nastiness out in the world, and I've said this before, but like, it just made me want to garden, like I wanted to stay at home and grow some vegetables. But I'm also realizing that, if all the well-intentioned people who have a desire to see societal healing, if they pull back, then what's left is just a bunch of people expressing nastiness. So for me, Derek, I liked your answer. It's where peace is. Healing is where peace is, and I'm trying to be less reactionary to nonsense that I see on Twitter, or nonsense that I see friends sharing on Instagram that just, kind of gets me riled up a little bit, and trying to be at a place, trying to create a home with my new family, right? And that is a place where I can take off my armor and be who I need to be, secure in my own vulnerability when I'm alone, right? And so that I can embrace people when they don't react the way that I think they should, or when they're not behaving in the way that I think they should. I first need to have that capacity when I'm sitting here on my couch alone, right? Before I can engage with them and accept people for who they are, where they are.
I am, and struck by the turtling and, their aspects. I think I just want to retreat, to, the intersectionality of like racial trauma, being a sexual minority, being multi-generational Christian and in Christian leadership, right, with expectations, and then deviating from an aspect of that 2,000-year-old canon that makes people feel really uncomfortable with me at times, And then other people were willing to just like, yeah, about time, happy for you, like, let's come in, let's do all of it, And I go, well, there are just multiple ways to be here, but there's only one way to be fully integrated as me. There's only one way to be completely honest. And that's a growth journey, certainly, about less about the content and more about the courage, to just be honest about the content, of your own life. Derek, you mentioned it earlier. It's like once you start telling your own story, and then people were like, hey, you need to stop being too black like that, right? Don't just tap that down.
Tone that blackness down, bro.
Turn that blackness down. And here I am, being like, the voices of blackness out here, like, what was the name of that Voices of Blackness song? What was that one called? Anyway, we'll have to look it up and give it to the people in the show notes. But I remember we were rocking the Voices of Blackness in the 90s. We were doing that, and Kirk, and, doing the whole thing, Kirk and, singing My Life Is in Your Hands and all this type of stuff. And then I was like, man, he is, if my life is really in his hands, will it be like that when everybody leaves? And will I feel that way? When I decide to individualize, my intersectionality is my individuality, right? So once I decide to be honest about that and to fully integrate and have God prioritize, or even to believe that God prioritizes my mental and physical health, right? That if that comes at the sacrifice of being compliant with the structures and systems, I don't even know where them things came from, really, right? Except they came out of the imagination and then the control of the majority. But let's be clear about the real implications. And I'm not a race baiter. I'm not a partisan person. I try to be balanced. I'm more of a therapeutic person, right? I'm a licensed social worker. I'm thinking about this from an ecosystemic point of view and putting myself in that environment as the client as much as I am the practitioner. How in the heck am I gonna live another day to do, Mark, what you said, not shrink back and then engage in society in a way that's contributional, in a way in which I actually believe my voice matters and that my contribution matters on the whole towards changing someone's life, or maybe even changing society, or at least my little slice of the pie, that it matters, to transform society in a way. So for me, I think that what's healing is like, man, if I'm being really honest, it's learning to accept that, like, not only does God love me, but that the people of God love me too, And this is a person, I'm ordained, right? I'm not absent from the church. I'm leaned in. I live in Hell's Kitchen right now in New York City, but I'm calling it Heaven's Kitchen, whatever. I'm trying to meet God in this place here, and I know that there are some distinctives, about how my life is manifesting right now that causes a bit of a kerfuffle for your progressive Christian and a kerfuffle for your traditional conservative Christian. And politically, I'm not about this Christian nationalism thing either. I'm not about white nationalism. The two of them are not the same, though they are correlated. They're not causated one another. They're correlated to one another. And then how do you find from a healed place that you're able to enter in as a transformational leader into conversations with, and I'm going to say their names. I'm not doing Mark Driscoll mess. I'm not doing Sean Foyt mess. I'm not doing this like new apostolic reformation mess. And those are people that I grew up with. They're like 20, 25 years being mentored in that movement, right? I'm not doing black church mess. I'm just doing Branden's mess and how can I show up in the world and try and be at least principled in my messiness, right? Like, what does it mean to love God fully and to practice that? So I feel like I'm really healing this relationship. Really, it's like a perspective between me and God that I don't have to conform to the system in order to be loved by Him. And I know that intellectually, but the 17 inches from your head to a heart is a journey, and you have to really commit to that. And that's that's years long, of a thing. And
it never ends.
It never ends.
I don't think it ever ends.
No, it doesn't.
Now, I think healing is a continual process, and I think we have a physical example of that because your body is continually healing. Your body, you don't even have the same cells in your body that you had when you were a young child, and you won't have the same exact cells, 20 years from now. Like, we're continually healing, but continually progressing, continually becoming new people. And I think that to think that just happens physically, but it's not supposed to happen spiritually or mentally. I think it's a gross.
And isn't that the promise of the gospel too, right? I'm still a gospel person, right? Like, I think it's the real problem. Like, if there was good news, gospel means good news, right? If there was real good news, regeneration is a great thing to be talking about when it comes to the gospel. Let me ask you a controversial question. This is to both of you again. What do we do about hell? What do we do about hell and how is hell real? We had, I don't know what order we're going to be sharing this podcast in, but we had a conversation with Brian Recker, who is now that the doctrine of hell has actually caused a lot of harm, to people in and outside of the church. Is there something valid within the context of the scripture about hell? But even more to the point, how do we live in love, in communities of love with people, and talk about the consequences of poor decisions? And is there an eternal damnation that is incentivizing, that we should be leveraging as incentives for people to change their lives?
So I think a lot of mistakes that people make when we look at the text is when we see like the Bible talk about Sheol. I found this out when I went to Israel. The Bible talks about Sheol. It's usually not talking about a spiritual place. It's an actual place in Israel.
Actual place.
Sheol. It was pretty much the trash dump. And so when Christ would be like, you find yourself in Sheol, wasn't necessarily talking about the lake of fire per se, but it was talking about...
Right. That was David. David's like, if I make my bed in Sheol, you were there. Right.
Or what Christ would say, you'd be cast into Sheol, right? So it wasn't necessarily talking about the lake of fire. So that's that on that. But there was a perspective that the soul exists beyond the body in the Bible. I mean, you see that clearly. So where I've landed personally is I don't spend a lot of time thinking about things I cannot control. I just don't. I told my wife I would follow God in the framework of faith that I have. I would still adhere to it if there was no such thing as heaven or hell. Like I don't do this. I don't live the way I live for some sort of eternal blessing. I live the way I live because it's Christ is the Prince of Peace. And by following this,
I'm actually going to need you to say it for the expensive seats in the front, not the cheap seats in the back. I need you to say it for the elite people who on their platforms actually do the opposite of what you just said.
I would follow Christ whether there was a heaven or hell. It doesn't that's it for me. It is it's irrelevant because I don't have any control. Ultimately, I could do everything that I think I'm supposed to do. And if there is a heaven or hell, it's God's to put me in or to not put me in, right? So for me, I'm like, when you look at the Bible was talking to, when I went to Israel, this opened the door for this perspective. That the Bible was written to an actual culture of people who were wrestling with what do we do now that we're in a community? Because you think about it, they were in Egypt, they took Canaan, and now it's their land. Now, what do we do now that we're here? And when you read the Old Testament and the Bible, the Father's biggest frustration with Israel was that they didn't treat one another with love and dignity. They cheated each other and treated people bad. And number two, that they didn't honor him as God. That was his big beefs. When you read the law and the commandments, that's all he wanted. And Christ said that, he reiterated that. It says, all of the law and the prophets hang on this. Love your neighbor as yourself and love God with all your heart. That all of them hinge on that. That's the whole point of the law. And that was God's biggest frustration in the original covenant, is that you're not keeping your covenant to treat your brother with respect, to not sleep with your neighbor's wife, to not steal, to not kill. You're not making these things right. And furthermore, you're embarrassing me because I bless you. I do all this different stuff, and then you go cheat on me with other gods. And what was our other gods having them do? Defile themselves, sacrifice their kids to Molech and things of that nature. So it's like, why would you take my blessing and then go sacrifice your kids to an altar of a God that hates you enough to make you want to kill your children? When you look at the Bible, it has more conversation about what we do with one another, not about this heaven and hell. It's very few scriptures that talk about that. So why have we made that the crux? Because it's a lot easier for me to talk about something that's going to happen down the road after I die than for me to say, you know what, I'm not going to hate my brother even though he hurt me. For me to say I'm going to take care of the poor and the widows. That's harder because that means you got to give up something right now. You got to give up something right now, and it's not philosophical, it's something physical. So for me, I'm like, let's invest there and let God sort out heaven and hell. That's my perspective.
I'm exactly where you are. I don't have anything to add to that,
Dang.
Mark. Do you believe in hell?
Dang. Well, I
Me
mean,
ask him. The
when
controversy. People want. It's not a gotcha question because people want to get you with the question.
know.
You see what I'm saying?
They
So
do,
I'm not
they
trying
do.
to. I'm kind of trying to get you.
I
but
mean,
you can answer.
when I looked
everyone.
at the outline and I saw the guest as Derek Miner and we're talking about entertainment, this is above my pay grade. I thought we could talk about fun things, like not like whether hell exists or not.
But you know
But,
me, I'm sad boy. I'm sad boy BP over here.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about hell on my watch. We ain't about
Let's
hope.
talk about it.
Hey, he thought we was going to talk
talk
about drum machines and what's your fondest
Noise.
memory on stage. This man Branden got us in the intellectual weeds right now.
Does hell exist? I will say that. I mean, I'm gonna answer it because I think I'm reading a book right now that's talking about how champions think. And because part of my healing that I'm in right now is I'm so intuitive, and I've quit my job and I moved to DC. I've quit my job in DC and I moved to LA, and I've quit that and I've gone back to Texas and I've run for Congress. So like there's just a bunch of things that I do intuitively. And I think as I'm in a place of healing, my intuition, my gut instincts, I feel like they're miscalibrated right now. So I'm trying to get back into a good place where I'm trusting myself. And I think, I'm reading this book called How Champions Think, and he's a sports therapist, a sports coach, and specifically with golfers. And he teaches them how to get out of their own way so that they can perform. And one of the things he says that he tells people to do is just, you need to let loose, you need to play. And the Bible talks about, training up ourselves as we would, like an athlete would, right? And so I think we're in a place where we get too in our heads about like, okay, what are the things that are right and wrong? And then what are the things that are going to keep us out of hell or get us into heaven, keep us out of hell? And I think, one measure that I'm looking for more and more lately is just who possesses the fruits of the Spirit. And if you possess those fruits, then I know that, you have God's Spirit in you, right? And there was something going around this week on social media with a pastor who answered the question whether Christians should go to gay weddings. And his answer, I don't know if you saw this, Branden, was...
That was Matt Chandler. I know exactly who it was.
Okay, you're gonna say it. And his answer was that they shouldn't because that affirms it. And and that's the kind of thing where I think we get in our heads, it gives someone, if they saw me going to a gay wedding, they're going to look at me then and say, oh, Mark is doing something bad, rather than seeing the way that I live generously, the way that I live just with so much love. But that becomes the focal point, right? And so that's where I think we, instead of playing loose or just letting the Spirit come out of us because we've been in the Word, we've been praying, we've been worshiping, like those things that are inside of us, we then get in our heads about, oh man, should I not go to this gay wedding because I heard this pastor say, a few months ago that I shouldn't. Like that gets in the way of letting the Spirit in my mind operate within you. And so, but that goes back to the question of heaven and hell, right? And there must be a right and a wrong, but it's just very judgmental language. And I don't say that as if there isn't a right or a wrong. There is truth, but I think that maybe we're not asking the right questions, and the things that we're trying to answer like that, like Matt Chandler, go have that conversation and at a coffee table with friends, like, have that theoretical exercise. But when you go on a podcast like that, that gives someone something to grab onto to really just kind of be cynical about or dampen someone else's light. And that's not the place where we should be operating from.
Yeah. And I love Matt. It's a expected answer to the question, from him. Your point, Mark, I think is well noted, because, and Mark and I disagree on this podcast, by the way, Derek, just in case you were wondering. At a certain point,
of course,
we're way more copacetic on this call with you. I don't know.
I don't know friends that don't disagree.
That's not real friends.
Yeah.
Not real friends. Yeah, exactly. It's conflict that brings you together, I guess, but, your point, Mark, about people being able to listen to God and have conviction, within the context of their own spiritual lives, right? And if you're a Christian, being led, in a way that's aligned with Scripture, as much as you can, And then there are just some things that we call extra biblical, or there's ambiguity, or whatever it is, And if we're just being intellectually humble and intellectually honest, what I'm looking for a Matt Chandler to do is to be honest about that ambiguity. That to me is principal leadership. If he had gone in and just said, I don't really know, I would have respected that more than making a blanket statement that just says, for anyone who's an onlooker or an on-listener, saying this is the prescription of how I need to behave in order to check my boxes off so that I get into heaven the next day, right? If something happened to me and I chose not to go to that gay wedding, at least I know that I'm going to heaven. But what if I did and I died the next day? That means I'm going to hell? That's the assumption. That's in the unconscious, right? Okay, let me shift us for a second. Speaking of the unconscious, I'm going deep into psychodynamic theory right now. Don't ask me why. I'm a therapist. That's probably the only reason why. And I'm studying because I'm in this doctoral program right now. So I'm just really thinking about, the unconscious. Okay, so clock that. Psychodynamic theory, just Freud, stuff, the unconscious stuff living in us drives our behaviors, right? That's sort of the theory there. The way that our culture is, right now, we're in the political season. We're 12 days out from the election, okay? You've got a black church in Atlanta praying for Kamala, saying that for such a time as this, she was born. So you prayed the Esther prayer over her, okay? Then you've got Donald Trump in North Carolina, and the people are like, can we pray for you? Okay? But then there's this event, the Million Woman March program that happened a couple weeks ago, led by some of the leaders that are spiritual parents to me. And one of them, Cheon, is on the stage and basically he calls himself an apostle, says that Trump is like Jehu, who went in and ran into the castle and overthrew Jezebel, and he called Kamala the Jezebel, and Jehu is the Trump, right? So his point, though he didn't mean, to talk about violence, he says, right? Jehu ran in there, threw Jezebel off the balcony, and then the dogs ate Jezebel for dinner, right? Okay. So can I ask you?
I didn't know that he said that. That's crazy.
He said that, and Che, I've known Che. We've all been around each other, for years now. Lou Engle put on the event. These are International House of Prayer people, Justice House of Prayer folks that I've known since I was a kid, since I was 17 years old. And black church folks, like TD, but that wasn't his church, but this was, I forget whose church it was, and Stevie Wonder sang her happy birthday and everything, all this kind of stuff. Kamala. Okay. Say her name. What is going on in the unconscious of the American church, of the Western church in particular in these United States, that is driving our behaviors on the political side of things? It's like we don't know what we're doing, and we don't know why we're doing it. Is there something going on in the deep of us collectively? If so, what do you think?
I'm wondering the same things. I was on Twitter today, and what was trending today was pray for Trump, and there were all these photos around of these evangelical political leaders laying their hands on Trump, and I immediately clicked out. It's X now. I didn't click out of Twitter. I clicked out of X. I was just like, I don't know. I think, Derek, maybe I saw you rubbing your hands. Maybe you have a better answer, but I'm just confused. I mean, I thought in 2017,
I'm over it.
Yeah, I'm like, what is happening? Like believe what you want, vote for who you want, but there's just this idea that we're just putting way too much stock in these two, and I think we wouldn't know it so explicitly, right? I think heroes rise up for moments and leaders rise up for moments, and they kind of come out of left field. And again, I'm looking for the fruits of the Spirit in people, and so who possesses the fruits of the Spirit? I don't know that You know, I don't know that either of those are it, but
And fruits of the Spirit, right? According, to Scripture, love, joy, peace, righteousness, and the Holy Spirit, right? Okay, so we're talking about.
gentleness,
But I think
self-control.
love, joy, peace. Yeah, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. I mean, that's fruit of the Spirit, right? I think I think that's right.
And I'm not calling America Israel by no means, but I remember in Israel with Saul, and it was like, God is leading us. We don't need a king. And they're like, no, we want a king. We want to be led. And I think that same ideology is here. We're looking for, again, it's easier for Trump or Kamala to save us as opposed for us to do the work to save our communities. The reason why even our political system is set up the way it is because the founding fathers didn't even think that the average American would care about the national elections. They didn't even think that because they thought we would care more about what's going on in our own communities. And the fact of the matter is I don't care who you elect. They can't fix the potholes in your street, on your neighborhood. They're not going to do it. You know who's responsible for that? You, your neighbor, the person you elect locally to take care of the community. Hopefully it's somebody from the community that lives in that community that cares about that community. But it's easier for us to take 4 years off of worrying about our community and then try to get one person, one man or woman to fix that. It's because we have skirted responsibility of changing our own lives. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think the thing that's going on in our unconscious, I mean, we as in church folk, whether you're Catholic, Protestant, evangelical, Pentecostal, whatever, Black church, Latino church, whatever it is, we have identity issues like crazy. We have identity issues. We have self-worth issues, right? We are trying to play the game in the system in order to, if we comply, then we'll be loved, right? We comply, we'll be accepted, and we'll belong. We're plagued by loneliness as much as anybody else is in the world right now, so I think that I'm as excited, Derek, as you are about the potential of where our hearts can be renewed, community renewal and revival, spiritual renewal. I am just so convinced that that is only driven by the person of Jesus, the history of him, the story of him, as much as the living, breathing part of him, And my Alexa just started talking to me as soon as I said that.
Oh, hey, Alexa said, tomorrow you going to see a lot of sun.
Alexa said, you going to heaven.
Alexa said, change is a-coming, Branden.
Change is coming. Sam Cooke, everything. She started playing. I was like, dang. Alexa, how did you know? The thing that I am convinced of is that it's Jesus who, I mean, let's just put it simply, right? You could be any religion, any background, secular, atheist, and agnostic, whatever it is, okay? I'm not asking you to convert. We didn't get into the conversation about if it's just love your God or love God and love your neighbor, that we didn't get into like, well, what is evangelization? Why is evangelization so important to the church then, right? And why is how we do it so important? If it really is just about loving your community and doing all of that in a way that is living in a way that's consistent with the way that Jesus lived, then why are we so committed to just getting people to say, I believe in him, and then we don't have to be in their lives or love them as they are, right? And I think that that's really what's changing, is that millennials, Gen Zers, the alphas that are coming up, the alpha generation that's coming up, and screw that, me too, right? I'm not interested. I'm literally not interested in enabling any of the systems any longer. So it means I have to abort them out of my own system. out of my inside that's so conditioned, like in a Pavlovian way, to pull that slot machine and get the pebble, like to actually get the thing that says, you're doing good, keep on going, keep on doing it. You're a good Christian, you're a good Christian. And I'm like, I can't afford that anymore, because then I don't have the fruit of the Spirit, because I can't actually be in like loving me and in gentleness with myself, or in peace in myself, if I'm too busy trying to like prove my identity and my worth and prove that I matter to everybody else in the world. I think that the renewal is people actually getting in touch with the fact that they matter, because God created you to matter. He didn't create you to perform. He created you just to exist for his pleasure. That is it. Right? And if we got that and then went out and did stuff in the world that would fill the potholes and fill the hearts and the souls and the mouths of people that needed it, I think that that's where we're going. That's really what the renewal is. So I have the greatest hope that regardless of who gets into the White House, that what we entrench on is not Christian nationalism. We don't entrench on burn the country down. We go deep into, as a result, creating a permission structure for people to live a life that's consistent with the principles and values that Jesus taught us to live and was the example for. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I believe in. But we need help. Last question. In a word, what are you most hopeful for, Derek Miner, Mark Bauer? In a word, you get one word to tell me what you're most excited about, most hopeful for in your life. People would say that to me all the time. Like, why do you keep asking us this tomfoolish question?
One word?
One word. That's the exercise. One word. We'll challenge our audience to. And one word. What are you most hopeful for?
Collaborators.
Okay. Hopeful for collaborators. For more of them to come into your life.
Rest.
And
I'm not talking about the absence of activity. I'm talking about the quietness. That ability to say, like, when I put something down, to say, it's good enough. It's good enough. That kind of rest.
I love that. Yeah. For me, I say hope. Hope is the thing that is here, and the hope is the thing that's manifesting. Yeah. A lot of hope right now. That's how I'm feeling today. You can check in with me tomorrow.
Amen.
I don't know how I'll feel then. Any last words, gentlemen? Anything else you'd like to say, Derek? What's on your mind as we close out?
You have the ability to be salt in your community today. It is not. Kamala ain't gonna do it. Trump ain't gonna do it. Your pastor ain't gonna do it. You know what I mean? You have the ability to be light and salt. And if it's dark, it's because all the lights are cut off. So just cut the light back on. It's time to get to work.
The mic dropped, period, full stop. Derek,
yeah,
my friend, thank
Man,
you. Thank you for taking the time to spend with us today. That was great and wonderful. Grateful for your story. Grateful for your creative energy and force in the world. We're looking forward to Vigilante in 2025. And may we all survive these here elections.
Yeah.
And may we also survive the inauguration.
Yeah.
May we also survive that. Oh, we are thriving.
We're here. We're going to be here.
I actually think, I don't make predictions, but I predict that we will be okay. I won't predict the outcome of the election, but I will predict that we will be okay.
Right. That's a great outcome.
Great outcome. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you.
Man, much
Thanks,
love,
Derek.
homie.